Hey guys, this is episode 25 of the Rugby Recap. You have myself, Rugby Itch, as well as the Kiwi lads. First of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, mate. 2 games this weekend. It feels weird to say, seeing as we've had such a stacked Rugby World Cup so far. Also, the URC starting back up. I've hardly heard anyone talking about that because there are eyes firmly on these two semi-finals. A rematch of the Rugby World Cup 2019 final and a rematch of the Rugby Championship between the All Blacks and the Pumas.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a kind of just an old belter of a matchup really between the Pumas and All Blacks, as well as the Springboks and English. I mean, I can't wait for the semi-final weekend. You know, it's just come around the corner so quickly. So, yeah, really excited for this, of course. Before we get into this preview, make sure guys to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and yeah, let's get straight into this. So, with the first the first semi-final being Argentina versus the All Blacks. I mean, this is a big matchup in the sense, an all Southern Hemisphere semifinal. And yeah, again, I mean, when was the last time these two sides faced actually? Because I think it was in Argentina. Was that the game, if I'm not mistaken?
It was start of the Rugby
Yeah,
Championship, and the All Blacks actually winning that game by about 29 points, I think
yeah,
it was, or somewhere around there. But I have a feeling that this game of the Rugby World Cup is going to be a lot closer. There's a lot more on the line for the Pumas here, so they will come to play, and I do hope they have a great performance. Close game up against the Welsh, although they ran away with it in the
yeah.
later stages of that contest, so yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think that kind of like that intercept try at the end kind of just blew the score out of, I guess, out of proportion, maybe to what it was actually as tight of a game. But no, it's interesting. I mean, like when you look at like the Pumas side I have up here, but there's not really many changes they've actually made towards their side. I mean, I guess good to see obviously Francisco Izza still continuing on that number 8 spot. 'Cause I thought he was pretty impressive throughout that within that Welsh game. I mean, I guess there's Bertuano obviously now back in the number 9 spot, which is, in my opinion, I think he's definitely the better 9 when you're comparing him to Capelli. So I think that's kind of a good switch up there. But yeah, I mean, besides that, it's kind of about the same team. I guess the only really big thing for the Pumas actually going into this was if Checo Barris was going to be available or not, because he had a bit of a kind of a knock, so he's kind of like a 50-50 going into this game. But no, he's available, so that's a good thing, I guess, from the Pumas. But yeah, I guess for the All Blacks, they've made some well, not a lot of changes, but they've made some notable changes in there. So what's your perspective of those changes?
I think all of the changes that they've made are relatively predictable, if that makes sense. Like, they haven't put any big wild cards in to make people go, oh,
Yeah,
why have they done that? Or tactically, I think they all make sense. Whitelock coming into the starting lineup rather than being off the bench like he was last week. Of course, crucial turnover for the final moments of that Irish game. Loose forward trio, same as they did have in that last contest. Sam Cane, Artie Savi are both fighting for man of the match in that game up against the Irish, making a huge amount of tackles. I feel like for Sam Cane, this is going to be a very interesting fixture for him because I feel like he played one of his best games ever in an All Blacks kit, and now up against Argentina, they can't underestimate what Los Pumas can do, of course, but they knew going into that game up against the Irish that they were going to be in just a massive fight in terms of having to dig deep, fight hard in it. Whereas this game up against Argentina, depending on how the All Blacks start, we may see them not have to put the foot down as hard as they did in that game up against the Irish. And of course, I say that with the utmost respect for what the Pumas have been able to do throughout this Rugby World Cup. It is just based on that Rugby Championship game. We know if the All Blacks start quick, the Pumas do struggle to be able to get back into the contest. Mark Talia back at number 11, out on that wing rather than Lester Fainanuku. And other than that, just a couple changes off the bench for the ABs. I'm curious to see whether or not we actually see Finlay Christie and Damian McKenzie make their way onto the field this
I
week,
was mentioning
as
this.
they were
Yeah,
players who did miss out. Although across these 4 teams, we actually saw a few players not get a chance to come onto the field. For the English, we didn't see George Ford make his way onto the park for their matchup against the Fijians. For Argentina, we also hardly saw. I mean, they did make the late changes, but overall it seems to be when you've got key players out there in the starting lineup, you have to make sure you're keeping them out there for as long as possible. And I'm very curious to see what kind of impact the players off the bench do have in the later stages as fatigue starts to wear on throughout this competition, who will be the fresher sides heading into the final.
yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think really fatigue is definitely going to be a big, may have a big impact in these semi-finals, of course. And it's one of those where I think when you look at the depth, I think across these sides, I mean, I think it's not an outrageous thing to say that the All Blacks and the Boks definitely have the biggest, well, have depth, going into their sides. And I think it's one of those where, they're both seen as the favorites, obviously, in their respective semifinals. But in particular for this semifinal between the Pumas, the All Blacks really do have a really good bench. I mean, like we said, they have the likes of McKenzie and they have Christie, Matt Brown will come off from a back perspective, and then from the forwards you have Papa Lee. I mean, you have Retallick, you got Takalaho in there as well. They have some good players actually coming off the bench there for the All Blacks. So I mean, every single one of them can make an impact. But it's I guess for the Pumas, when you look at their bench again, yes, it's not as strong. But if I were to name a few kind of maybe names that could change the game, I mean, I'd have to look maybe at Eduardo Bello, because he did pretty well actually coming off the bench for the Pumas in that game against the Welsh. Obviously got a try to his name as well. I mean, Mateus Alemano, been a very solid player for a while, and actually did start for a bit for the Pumas in the opening games of the group stages. I mean, Rodrigo Bruni, another good player, I'd say, solid player for them. But I think the key one, and probably the two key ones that I'd look out for in this one, is Nicolas Sanchez, of course, because he brings a lot of experience for that Pumas side. And if the Pumas are in a good position, where it's a close game, going up to the 60th minute, then you bring Sanchez on, then that could really impact how it's going to go in the Pumas' favor. Actually, I think bringing on a player like that with a ton of experience. The experience she has really, and then yeah, you have Mateus Moroni, of course, who kind of had that try-saving tackle at the end against Louis Rees-Zammit. So yeah, they have a decent bench. I'm not gonna, but again, when you look at that All Blacks bench, it's just stacked. It's going to be tough to beat them in the long run. But I guess in terms of the one to watch players going into this one, who's kind of getting your attention really from a forward but also a back perspective for both these sides.
So for one New Zealand forward, I would probably have to go with Ardie Savia. Seems like the obvious answer, but just with what he's been able to do throughout this Rugby World Cup, alongside what he did in that game up against the Irish, definitely one of those players that can change a matchup. And whether it's his goal line defence, which we might see the All Blacks having to use a little bit here up against an aggressive Pumas outfit, could be absolutely crucial, getting that one big turnover that could change the momentum of the game. For the back line, I mean, we saw Rieko Ioane really step up in the last game. He was a player who had struggled for form, but he seemed to probably play his best game of the Rugby World Cup so far in that last contest up against the Irish. So he will be another one to watch out for, alongside, to be honest, probably his Blues teammate in Beauden Barrett. And number 15, does he play more of a running game up against the Pumas? Because we have seen in that first game of the Rugby Championship, the thing that helped the All Blacks was the fact that they were pushing the pace, trying to take the Pumas into deep water. I feel like that's exactly what they've got to do here. Here's a fun fact for you, Tim. These four sides who have made it through to the semi-finals, all four of them are at the top of the bunch in terms of the least amount of tries conceded in the first 20 minutes of a game. So New Zealand and England are yet to concede a try throughout that first 20 minutes. Argentina, South Africa only conceding the one. So defensively, in the first 20 minutes, all of these sides extremely solid. But I believe that all four of them have the potential of scoring against the opposition throughout that first 20 minutes because of how dangerous their attack can be. I think those two players for the All Blacks that I mentioned in their backline, Ioane and Barrett, they are two that can certainly help the ABs. Towards it for Argentina, in their four-pack, I believe the impact that we saw from Fernando Isa in their last game up against the Welsh certainly showed that he is more than up for the task of taking on a spot in the starting lineup. And then in their backline, there are quite a few important players. Bertrand coming into this side, that is a lot of pressure on him, seeing as they do not have Thomas Gubelli anywhere in the lineup. Instead, Bazin Velez to come off the bench. Emiliano Boffelli, his kicking tee, is possibly going to be very busy throughout this contest. But yeah, I'd probably say Mateo Carreras. He got himself a hat-trick in an earlier contest of the Rugby World Cup. We hardly saw him in that game up against Wales. That was mainly due to the fact that he had to defend up against Louis Rees-Zammit. But I would say Mateo Carreras up against Will Jordan, that is a must-win battle for the Argentine out on that wing, because if Will Jordan finds his momentum, it's going to be a long day at the office out on that side.
Yeah, no, I have some good names you actually pointed out there. I mean, I'll start with the Argentinians first. I think if I had to say kind of the key player to look out for in terms of that forward pack, I probably would actually say Julian Montoya, just because, again, he's always been a player whenever he's on form, he can definitely change the game in favor for the Pumas. But particularly, he's known for winning the ball within the breakdown, and if he can do that a lot in this game, it increases Argentina's chances, I think, in winning because when you have someone like Buffelli who can kick, I mean, all you really need to do is just win the ball and get a penalty, and then you have Buffelli to step up for you. So it's kind of like Buffelli. I'm saying he was also going to be a very important player, but really it's going to come down to the players who win the ball from the breakdown. And I think Julian Montoya will be a big part in that. So yeah, I'd say he's definitely the one I'd look out for in terms of that forward pack. You can maybe even say Marcos Kramer, I think, is another player I'd say, just because that battle between him and Kane is going to be very fascinating to see how that plays out. But yeah, I guess from the back line, I mean, yeah, you said Mateus Caceres. I'm looking more at Santiago Caceres, I'd say, in this one. I think he's kind of a player who, if he can kind of step up in this one, kind of play, I guess, a similar performance to what we saw against, I'd say, the Japanese, but also against the Welsh, then yeah, I think you can definitely, it can help the Argentinians make the game close and, kind of make it close in that, the dying 10 minutes. And then that's where it gets decided. But yeah, I mean, Lucio Cinti as well, probably another player to look out for. But I guess in terms of the All Blacks, I mean, gosh, I mean, they have a ton of good players here. I mean, like, I thought Cody Taylor was actually pretty good actually in that game against the Irish, so he's definitely one to look out for. I mean, that matchup really between him and Montoya will probably be a key one to look out for. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to say Sam Cane. I think he's probably the guy I'm kind of interested to see how well he does. Kind of continue that form that we saw within that Irish game, and yeah, just kind of pull out another brilliant performance. Really, that's kind of what I think what every New Zealand fan is really hoping. And yeah, just yeah, I think he can do it, but it's gonna he'll have to do a lot because I think he had 22 tackles if I'm not mistaken in that game. I think it's like the second most out of any All Black player since Richie. I think he got 26. So it's pretty impressive, from a defensive point of view. So if you can keep that up again, then yeah, I don't see any reason why not the All Blacks can win this game. But yeah, I guess in terms of that back line, I think I would have to say Martelea. I mean, him coming in for Lester Fanaanku it's a big call and a big decision, really, because in all honesty, I think Lester actually had a very underrated game. Yes, he didn't have he got a try for himself as well, which is was good, well worked try, and he wasn't, I think, as influential you'd say from the breakdown, because normally he actually does. He kind of wins a few penalties, I'd say, for his sides. Yeah, if it's good for the Crusaders or the All Blacks, in any case. But yeah, I think Martelea he's going to add a different factor towards his side. Definitely more of a you can't even say try scoring, I guess, ability, because I mean Lester Fanaanku has that as well. So it's really just more of I guess just a different way in how. Because how do you say Martelea plays differently to Leicester? Because there are kind of two different players in this sense. Like, how do you kind of compare the two or kind of separate them, really?
More missed tackles. No, I'm joking. But Martelea, he's one of those players that he does seem to go searching for the ball. But like you said, Lester Fanaanku also does end up doing that.
Yeah.
It's actually really interesting looking at the comparison between the two and how similar they can be, but also separate.
Exactly.
At the same time, I would say Martelea is a little bit more of a slipperier man when it comes to him being on attack, and they manage to miss a lot more tackles when trying to get to Leah, whereas Lester Fanaanku seems to be more of a solid target that you hit into, but it's hard to hang on to him when you've got to hang or you've got to hold on the man. But yeah, Talia, I'd say probably manages to beat defenders a little bit easier in terms of his stepping. Whereas Fanaanku, he just runs over the top of it.
Yeah, he takes on the pressure. Yeah. Fair enough. I mean, yeah, that's probably a good way to separate the two, I'd say. But yeah, no, I think Martelea. I think he's just kind of the guy I'm looking out for most in that game. But before we move away from this one, who is kind of what is your prediction? Just what's your prediction overall for this? Because it's going to be I'm intrigued to see what you think.
Well, of course, people will call me biased, won't they? But we have seen New Zealand. They've come in as heavy favourites for this contest. I mentioned about it as well. More than double the favourite to what we did see in the game between England and Fiji came in as the biggest underdogs, being about $3.10. For this game, Argentina coming in at about $7 underdogs. So They are not expected to win this contest, but that is something that the Pumas sometimes, I guess, thrive off, is the pressure of being the underdog and knowing like this is our game where we've got to go out there and cause a massive, massive statement. Be huge for Argentina if they win it, but I don't quite see it happening. I do see New Zealand getting themselves over the line. I'll be honest, I did a preview yesterday where I predicted what the score would be, and I've forgotten what my score prediction was for it. I know I backed New Zealand to win, and I think I backed them to win by about maybe 10 points, maybe 7 points, somewhere around there. I think will be roughly where we do see it. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, mainly because the try-scoring prowess of these two lineups. Yeah. I don't see the All Blacks scoring any less than 3 tries in this contest. And to be honest, if the Pumas are on song, I don't see them scoring any less than 2 or 3 as well. So, yeah, I'd say All Blacks by around that 10 mark. But I'd love to see it be close down to the wire because, to be honest, we've just been spoilt for rugby in those quarterfinals for how close the games have been. But maybe we see completely different for these semi-finals. Perhaps they are the one-sided affairs before heading into the final.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see why you think that. It's just one of those like where when you have those 2 big matchups in the quarterfinal, it really does feel like these ones are more like, I don't know. I'm not saying it's easier to predict, but it's also one of those like where it's definitely in favor of one team more than the other. That's for sure. And yeah, I guess going into this one, I mean, yes, it would be, I guess, you got to say the All Blacks will win this. I think at the end of the day, I think the All Blacks are definitely the heavy favorites, and they should win it. In all honesty, they should win this. It's one of those where they do have the better squad. Just overall the better starting 15. There's not like I was considering maybe do like a player because I normally do a starting 15 between these two, well, between the semifinals and all that, but it's pretty difficult actually when thinking about it. Like I may do it. I'll see. Like, there's not much time, obviously, going into the semifinal now. But I mean, like when I was doing my team, I don't think I'll probably do it. So I can probably I can adjust it right here. I think I only had like 3 Argentinians in my side. Like it was something like that. Like where it's pretty, one way in terms of I guess like the player for player comparisons. And again, maybe there's one that I could have added a 4th, but I felt it was kind of wrong because. I went with Ethan de Groot and Tyrell Lomax as my props. And yes, I think Thomas Gallo has actually been pretty impressive throughout this tournament, but I just thought I had to include Ethan de Groot and Lomax after that performance against the Irish. I mean, besides that, I think it's, you could probably, I think, who did I put in? I put like Juan Martin Gonzalez, I believe, as the 6. I put Baffelli in, of course. And I think I put in
rather than Will Jordan.
No. So I had it as like Will Jordan as my 14. I think I put Bowden Barrett as the 15, and I put Baffelli as the 11. Because the thing with Baffelli, he can play all the back 3. And he's done that. So I was pretty kind of I guess rotational with him in that sense. But I think was there one more player I was considering to put in. I think there was Juan Martin Gonzalez. There was Baffelli. I think that could have been it, actually. Like, and then that, I put Julio Montoya. That's who I put in. I put Julio Montoya in. I've been like, because he's just someone I've always rated. Maybe people could get on for me for that, putting him ahead of Cody Taylor. But I just think Julio Montoya is just a legend of the game, and I think he's just been one of the best. I actually do seriously think he's probably been one of I think top 3 hookers. I think for the last like few years now. I don't think that's a harsh thing to say, or an outrageous thing to say, really. So yeah, I think that's why I kind of put him ahead in that sense. But no, I think for my prediction, I got to go for the All Blacks in this. But it's like my head is just saying the All Blacks. My heart is wanting the Pumas obviously to win. But yeah, no, I think the All Blacks will be favorites. So that's the reason why I'll go with them. And I think you said 10? It'll be 10 points. You said will be the kind of. I'm gonna say someone like that. I think like it'll be. I think the Pumas will actually only. I think the most tries they'll even get into this one is probably only 1. To be perfectly honest, I don't see them scoring as much. I think it's more like they'll get most of their points from a penalty position if they are to win this game. I mean, they could get 2 tries. I'm not gonna say. I just don't think they'll get more than 2. Let's just say that. I don't think they'll get more than 2 in this game. Yeah, I'm gonna say they'll win it. I think the All Blacks win this game by 8 points. I'll say by 8 points. But again, I would not be surprised, by the way, guys, if this is one of those games where the All Blacks actually win this by more than 20. That may be a harsh thing to say, but I just would not be surprised at all that does come to it. But yes, moving away from that one semifinal on to the next one, which is South Africa versus England. Very nervous for this one. Again, the Boks, similar to New Zealand, are heavily favorites going into this game. I think in percentage terms, you could probably say it's like 80-20. I think what the public is kind of saying. In terms of who's going to win this one. But yeah, I mean, just what's your take on the game? Because again, like I said, South Africa are favorites, but you can never really underestimate the English. So what's your take on it?
I think it should be a very entertaining game of rugby, of course. Both sides making minimal changes. For the Springboks, not making a single change to their 23-man side. And, I mean, that's just showing how much they back the players that they've got in this starting lineup. They have once again gone with that Reinach and Lebok combo, which I feel worked very well in the early stages of the game up against France. Springboks scoring themselves 3 quick tries. If they can do that up against the English, I would say that almost shuts England completely out of the contest, although it does depend if England are also scoring during that time.
Yeah.
For the last 2 games for the Springboks, we have seen them concede the most tries that they have throughout this Rugby World Cup competition. But yeah, for England, they're definitely going to have to muscle up in that 4-pack. I feel like they've got the potential of being able to do so, but I think with the Springboks, some of the players that they've got at the moment and the form that they've found recently, it is going to be a tough day at the office for the English. And that is, once again, not because of Southern Hemisphere bias, which people did blame us for when we gave our original predictions of saying these 2 sides would make it far in the competition. But I honestly think that it could be a close game, but there's also that chance, similar to what you said about the All Blacks game, that we do see a little bit similar to what we saw in the World Cup final, and perhaps a 32-12 is just around the corner once more.
Oh, you think it could be that wide of a margin?
Depends on what English side we see show up. I don't understand some of the selection. I mean, you had a perfectly informed George Ford thrown him away for the sake of bringing back Farrell, who still likes to get himself in trouble. We've seen that recently. Almost ended up with that yellow card near the end of the game up against the Fijians. I think I saw Nigel Owen said he should have got one for it because it was a very cynical bit of play. But wrap the arms. That's the advice I give them.
I agree with you, actually. I think in a weird way, maybe this comes back to me, kind of to haunt me, really. But I do think England will be a better side with Ford at the 10 position rather than Farrell. I just think it's one of those where I think they play just better rugby at the end of the day. Merely more, I guess, they were able to kind of what's the word? Like get those wins, but in a very difficult manner, but also in a way which you have to do really in Rugby World Cup when it comes to knockout stages and throughout all these games. So no, I was really impressed with Ford, actually. I think I put him in my team of the tournament, actually, for the group stages. I mean, not for the the overall, but I know, like, in terms of, I just thought he was really impressive. So it is a bold move, but I understand, obviously, with having Farrell in there, they're always going to kind of revert back to him at the end of the day. And I guess for the English as well, they don't have Marcus Smith available for this. I think he is out, I believe, with if it's like a head injury. So I think it is going to be Freddie Stewart obviously takes his place in there. Definitely not a bad replacement at all. He's a very good player at the 15 jersey. And yeah, again, that central combination of Tunglangi and Marchand will be pretty good. They were very good, actually, I'd say, against the Fijians. And yeah, I mean, that going against the likes of Dimon Delende and Jesse Cleo, it's going to be a really good battle between those two in the middle of the field. But yeah, I guess from a four position, I'm trying to think, like, is there any? There's not. I think there's George Morton, of course, who has been swapped in, I believe, for Ollie Cheslin. But besides that, there hasn't been really many changes the English have made on that front. And yeah, like you said, the Boks have already, they've just gone with an unchanged side, so it's exactly what we saw beforehand. But yeah, like, do you think like the system of like going with Reinach and Lebok as the starting 9-10 combination, and then having Pollard and Flapper Clerk will, off the bench will be kind of will it work out again like what we saw against the French? Or do you think it could be very different if, for example, if the English were to be ahead by a large margin, or going in at halftime with the lead? Like, what do you think on that front?
Of course, the only other change in that 4-pack is Joe Marler into the starting
Yes,
side
yeah,
rather than Alice Gench. I think for the Springboks, I'll be honest, with the starting lineup that they've gone with and with Reinach and Lebok at the helm, I see it as very difficult for them to be down by a large margin, if that makes sense. I feel like they've just got too many world-class players amongst their side. But if it is the case of them being down, I feel like Faf de Klerk and Hondre, what we saw from them in the last game showed that they are capable of keeping a game close, getting those important penalties over. I will say once the Springboks did make those changes, it seemed like attacking-wise, there weren't as many threats for the Springboks when it came to being able to bust through, score tries, but that could also be because of the situation of the game. It was getting close to the end. You don't want to be trying to go for that wide cutout pass, which could then cost you a contest. Look at what happened between Wales and Argentina. They tried that skip past Sam Costello. Nicolas Sanchez said, "Thank you very much." Of course, probably said it in Spanish and then scored the try between the sticks. So I would say overall, I like the fact that they are looking to be aggressive with the attacking players, plus picking the informed Kobus Reinach from what he's been able to do throughout his Rugby World Cup, liking to go for those sniping around the sides. Alex Mitchell, bit of a interesting one for the English because we've seen him have some solid games, but I don't think we've seen him have a standout performance yet in that number 9 jersey. And the question mark still for me, I feel, is if George Ford was at 10, would we see that next level performance from Alex Mitchell? Is it Farrell at the moment that's a slight problem with the backline? Now, that's not saying England didn't play well in their game up against Fiji. It's still that question of could they have been better, though, if they had that little bit of a switch.
I agree. Yeah, it's an interesting predicament they have there. But again, they have, like we already said this, but Farrell does seem like their guy for the meantime. So, they're going to obviously go with the experience that he has under his belt. But, I guess in terms of the ones to watch for this game, just very quickly from both sides, I'm going to say only one player this time. Who's the one player that you're looking out for? And then what is the key battle in the field in terms of this game?
Well, for the Springboks, key player, he scored himself a try last week. He did a lot right in that last contest. And he also got a crucial charge down of a kick, Cheslin Colby. I think that he has really shown in the last 1 or 2 games why he was such a brilliant player in that 2019 World Cup. He lives for that little bit of extra pressure in a game, and it seems like he's just found his stride. He's going to keep on having it all the way to the final if the Boks do make it that far. And I think that compared to a couple of the games in the group stage, we really saw Colby just play next level up against the French, and I look forward to seeing what he does in this game. I think for England, their key player is going to be either 12 or 13, but I would say Joe Marchant, mainly because him versus Jesse Krill, going to be very entertaining. Marchant scoring a try last week up against the Fijians, of course, Tuolangi able to do the same, but I just feel like Joe Marchant, with that little bit of extra speed, if they can create a line break opportunity alongside the Tuolangi crash ball, it's just going to be a very exciting one to watch. Key battle, I think, is Farrell versus Lebok. And I honestly feel like at the moment, it sounds like I'm really harsh on Farrell, doesn't it? I saw the potential. It's like Henry Arundel scores 5 tries in one game and they go, you know what? He's second equal on the try scoring tally. We just won't play him again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise me if England play him next week in the 3rd place playoff game. If they do
actually get it
playing in that contest.
That would be interesting.
But, I'd say Farrell, the experience versus Marnie Lebok's X factor, it's going to be must-see when the two sides take to the park.
Yeah, I guess then for me, really, like when I think of a key player for both these sides, I think, look, maybe I'm wrong in saying this because he didn't have as impactful game as what I thought he would have, but I'm actually going to look at the number 8s here for both sides in terms of, I'm going to look at really Ben Earl, I'd say, for the English as kind of the player I look out from an English perspective. And then I guess Dwayne Vermeulen, you got to say for the Boks. I think that's kind of like the matchup I look out for in terms of this game. You could also say maybe even Freddie Stewart versus Williamsa. I mean, that's be another good matchup in the back of the field. But I guess in terms of the ones to watch players just from both sides, I mean, the battle of like Atoje and Etzbeth, that's a really good battle. I'm just going with matchups here, but there's just so many good matchups actually that I could think of here. Yeah, I mean, I think Etzbeth, I've got to say, is probably the one you're going to look out for in this game from a Bok perspective. But then for the English, yeah, you know what? I probably would say Freddie Stewart is the one that kind of intrigues me the most, actually, just in terms of what he'll be able to do in replace of Marcus Smith, obviously in that position. So yeah, I think that's kind of like the two players I'm going to look out for in this one. But yeah, before we kind of round this up, what's your prediction for this game?
Well, I do remember my prediction for this one, and I did go 30 points to 22 in favour of the
Ooh,
Springboks. So an 8-point
yeah,
difference. I can honestly see the Springboks starting this match extremely quick in England, slowly just getting narrowly back into the contest. But yeah, I think the Springboks, they're going to be out for blood. They're going to want to get to that final. And then who knows, maybe they face the All Blacks or maybe they face the Pumas. But I honestly
yeah,
feel like South Africa, it's their game to lose. England, even though they are undefeated throughout this Rugby World Cup competition, so they should be regarded as a little bit more of a favourite perhaps, but they are heavy underdogs. And when you see the lineups, it shows world-class player after world-class player for the Boks, a lot of standouts for England, but I just see the Boks as the overall better side going into this contest.
yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, like, geez, like 30-22. That's a pretty high score. I actually think it's the opposite way around for this. Maybe this is a bit me going back a bit back in time, but just looking back at the semifinals score lines that we had in 2019, like it was what I think like 19-17, something like we had for that Bok game, if I'm not mistaken. And then for the English game, it was like 17, it was like 19-7, or it was something like that for that game. So they were pretty kind of low score lines. So I'm gonna go off the same. I could be completely wrong here, but I'm gonna go with this. I think it'll be a lower score line to what we see in this game, definitely compared to the Pumas All Blacks game. So for that reason alone, I'm going to go with a scoreline of, I'm going to say like 19 points to like, 19 points to like I'll say 13. Like 19 points to
Okay.
13. Somewhere, it's going to be cagey, but I do think the Boks will, get out of this and just, I guess, advance to the final. Well, hopefully that's what I'm hoping for. But we'll see what happens there. But yeah, we'll leave it there, guys. Hope you guys obviously enjoyed this preview for this for the Rugby World Cup in terms of the semifinal matchups. Make sure to like the video, guys. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Check out our respective channels, and yeah, we'll see you guys next time.